Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, here we are, and we are live on YouTube. Excited to have an amazing guest today. We met on a podcast that was kind of like a roundtable format, and then we started talking, found that we had a lot of similar ideas and perspectives about the world, and I want to warmly welcome Jayna Swan, everybody, to the podcast. Welcome, Jayna.
And the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, that's right. The live chat is going nuts.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Let's do it. This is going to be an off the rails chat. I'm excited.
That's so cool. Yeah, I am excited too. Yeah, I know we definitely seem to, have a lot of common ground when we were on a podcast together. Maybe it was a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks ago now. Yeah, something like that. And then you said you checked out the reality transurfing summary, so that's really cool that it landed. It's
It surfed into my life. It was great.
That's right. It's just rolled right in there. No, but that's great. So we can talk about all kinds of stuff. I really want to talk about your work and what you're doing, because I know you have an extensive background and a great story. I saw one of your posts the other day. It was like, this is such a great thing that we can talk about. Your background and kind of where you come from. And then we can go absolutely off the rails into whatever woo-woo crazy rabbit holes that pop up. I'm into it.
Yeah, I love it, because I remember on the podcast where we met, like, we literally hadn't said a single thing to each other. Each of us are answering the questions, and as you would answer, I'd have this, and I'd like take notes about your answer. And I saw the similar thing, and I think mutually, at least in my own mind, I was like, I just want to leave and have a conversation with him right now. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it was cool. It was an interesting format, but it was cool. I loved meeting everybody that we did, and it just like immediately afterwards, I was like, find your Instagram. I'm like, hey, I gotta get you on the show. And then it's been the holidays, and
but when you match frequencies, you just know, and you vibe, and it's like, that's my thing, is I'm in this world of just attracting the right people, and I'm not chasing anymore. And it's just this, if I meet someone synergistically like this, and it's like, oh yeah, this person's my vibe, it's like, I for sure want to connect more. That's where it's working so much better in my life that way. I used to sit and be that, wait, be my friend, and like desperately chasing people. And it was like never working out the way that I wanted. And now that I'm focusing more on just, I'm good with me. And it's like, oh, that'd be a cool addition to my life. And going from that energy is so much different. You get much different results just starting from where you're vibrating, right?
I love that as a mindset shift. Yeah, that's something I've had to work on too. Kind of a former people pleaser, Got to add some boundaries in there. It's good, just give us a little bit of background on you and your work for anybody who's kind of new. We got a couple people in the chat. Lulu, Meredith, what's up?
Hi, Lulu. Hi, Meredith. How are you? Yeah. So my name's Jayna, and I have been doing, oh gosh, where to even start? So it was December 9th of 90. Okay, no. So I have been working with people for a very long time. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a professional dancer, and I thought that was how I was going to be blessing this world with my energy and my personality, and that was not it. I was on the track of being a professional dancer, and while I was there, I started developing cysts on my vulva. And that's really where my story starts. And I was only 19 years old, and I woke up with a golf ball between my legs one day. Literally so painful, couldn't stand, couldn't sit, couldn't walk, was like in excruciating pain. At the time, I was working in restaurants. And so it happened to be Labor Day weekend, which, if you know anything about restaurants, is the absolute busiest holiday of all holidays. You think it's Christmas? No, it's not. It's Labor Day because nobody wants to work on Labor Day. So what did they do? Service industry. And I called in and was like, hey, I can't come into work today. It's the first time in my life I had to ask off. And it was only because I literally couldn't walk. And he was like, I'm sorry, but you have to come in. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. And at the same time, I was like, how do I tell him? Like, it's a male. How do I tell him that, like, my vulva is the size of a golf ball? Like, there's no way. I literally told him, hey, if you could just put the female manager on, I don't mind even just sending her a picture. This is not happening. What he tells me is, Jayna, if it's that bad, either you show up or you lose your job. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, but really, truly, if it's that bad, go to the ER. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So we rolled into the ER. I waited 4 hours in excruciating pain, watching stab wounds and gunshots and all these different crazy things. And I'm sitting there in the chair, like, I beg to differ. I think I'm in more pain than he is right now. And like, it was hard. And then I got into that room only for the doctors really to just not know what's happening. And they're just like, well, we're just going to drain it. So I was held down by four nurses, arms and legs pinned down to that table as they drained this because needles is my number one fear. And so that was huge, hugely transformative. I thought, all right, we're done, never happening again. 3 days later, ended right back up in the hospital. Another cyst was growing in the exact same spot. And I was like, what is happening? So they said, well, it seems like this is going to be a fastly regrowing situation. Let's just remove the gland. Like, okay, what does that mean? Well, it means you're going into emergency surgery tomorrow morning. So I did. I was rolled right in, and I ended up having an incision the length of my thumb, 10 stitches. I was in the hospital for 8 days on morphine. It was extensive. It was bad. I remember laying in that hospital bed thinking to myself, either I'm never going to have sex again in my life, or I'm going to get a PhD in pleasure. And I chose the latter, thank God, because I don't know what life would be like without that part of me. And through the following years, through that following decade of reoccurring cyst over and over and over, it just felt like getting jabbed in the gut every time because I was going down every rabbit hole. I'm like, is it what I'm eating? So I cleaned up my diet. Is it what I'm rubbing on my skin? So I went all natural. Is it what I'm eating, what I'm thinking, what I'm consuming, who I'm hanging out with? Like I did not know. I was really trying to find it. I could not figure out what the pattern was. And then I finally gave up and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be in pain for the rest of my life. It's just going to happen. I just need to accept it. First thing in life is accepting, right? We have to, awareness and acceptance. I thought that was going to be my life. So I decided I want to go get certified to help my clients, who I was coaching at the time, release their baggage and their limiting beliefs so that they can transform and have a better life. And through the process of getting that certification, through the process of learning neurolinguistic programming, I got to go through what's called a breakthrough session myself. And during that, I had the opportunity of being confronted by my sexual abusers. Not physically in the same room or anything, but when you confront that part of yourself, it feels as if. And so I got the honor of forgiving, the honor of letting go. And when I finally did, they stopped. And I have now been without a cyst for almost 4 years. It's been
Wow.
since January of 2021 was my last surgery. So here we are 4 years later. I've not had a cyst. And yeah, it's all that to say. I
Wow.
went through massive medical problems and through that whole thing, I learned a lot about myself. And now I'm in a position where I get to help other people. I get to take that exact same transformative experience that I went through and I get to gift that to other people. And it's a gift that comes with a lot of pain because you got to go through the hard stuff to figure out what really is causing those triggers, what's really causing you to spiral, and what's giving you. We talked in that podcast briefly, and it's something I keep going back to over and over is that the world is just a mirror. If you want to get a different reflection, you got to change the image that you project onto that mirror. And so I love getting to help hold that mirror up to people and say, look, what do you want to change? Okay, cool. This is how we change. And then holding their hand and walking them through that. And I've been able to walk so many people through it that I've saved people from taking their own lives. I've helped people stay in marriages. I've helped people get into marriages. I've helped people all the spectrums, right? And so it brought me to this place to where I started to ask myself, what's the pattern? And again, pattern recognition is something I've always tried to have forefront in my mind when it comes to these things because I'm a good balance of art and science here. Like I'm a good balance of woo woo and like the tangible. So it was very much like I needed to find the pattern. And when I finally figured it out, like okay, when I move my body, when I meditate, when I learn something new through mindfulness, when I manifest with my words through speaking my future into my life, and when I celebrate myself every day and give myself a little bit of sexual pleasure, that takes all areas of my life and lifts it up. And I end up having much better days than those days where I'm feeling down or I slip into that depression that some of us can find ourselves in. Like that was the pattern. And so now I'm in this space where I get to teach that to other people so that they can also save time, not struggle anymore, and they can regulate their emotions so that they can then go back home and spend quality time with their kids, quality time with their partners. Because so many people are wrapped up in the overwhelm and the burnout from work and from health and all these other areas of life that their time with their kids, they're either scrolling on their phone or they're like not even present in the room. And so I really just want to bring people back to being present, being here, and being able to regulate ourselves. And with the chaos in the world, it's really an internal job, right? We have to have these tools so that we can start from the inside out. Because if you expect the rest of the world to bring you peace, it is not happening. So you gotta inside out.
Yeah. Happiness is an inside job.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I like that. So very interesting and very cool. So when you did that, I guess exercise and confronted, what was it that made you go down and do that as an exercise to see, was that like a spiritual prompting? Was there a specific book or something that you read or mentor that introduced you to that idea?
I had been reading self-help books and in this world for so long already. I think that what it was just being confronted with such big, when you ever heard the story of the yelping dog? It's like someone's sitting on their porch rocking on the chair and the dog's just sitting there and every now and again the dog will yelp. And someone else comes up to the house and they hear the dog yelp and yelp. And they're like, why is the dog yelping? Oh, well, the dog's sitting on a nail. It's like, well, why won't it get up and move? It's not painful enough yet, right? The dog won't move until it's painful enough. I think I was doing things wrong and I wasn't listening. And my body was like, all right, time to reel it in, time to bring in the big guns. And was like, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to put you on your ass so that you have to listen to me. And that was really what it was. I think that's what it wasn't anything I read or saw. It put me flat on my butt and laying in bed was the first opportunity that I got to really pause. I was 19. Think about it, 19, 18-year-old, 19. We're always out doing something, right? We're always trying to get into some sort of trouble, doing something, living life, right? That's what we called it. So I constantly was going. This is the first time I got to stop. I was in bed with nothing. And when you're finally there, just pausing for the first time, and you go, oh, well, Johnny drinks and all he's doing is putting on weight. And Sarah goes home and studies and she's getting A's in her classes. And Tanika has gotten this. And it's like you start to see cause and effect at play right in front of your eyes. And I was like, oh, so what are and that was the first moment I really got to pause enough to be like, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm only ever going to build someone else's life. I needed to stop and do me. And that's when I stopped and I was like, all right, cool. Restaurants isn't serving me anymore. What can I do today I can get into that'll get me out of this? And that I can actually build my own world. And the only business I could think of that took more time than it did money and it was a skill I already had was a cleaning business. So I
Mm.
started scrubbing toilets and floors. And I was like, that's how I was gonna, it saved my life, honestly. And it's like toilet bowl cleaner will forever be my savior. It's like,
That's
I
awesome.
how else do you get into rooms with wealthy, powerful, intelligent people when you're I'll be honest, a dumb 19-year-old at the time. Like, right, I had nothing to offer. I had nothing. I had no college degree. I had nothing going for me. Now, I had a past history as a championship dancer, but like that doesn't really translate. It's not like that translates into money or anything. My career in dance fizzled a long time ago when my surgery started. And that's okay. I utilize it now in my retreats. So everything's full circle, baby. It all connects. I'm not worried. And the whole aspect of everything that was happening was there to teach me something. Everything that was there to lead me to who I am today. I'm so grateful for all of the pain. I'm so grateful for every bit of struggle that I went through because those moments are what taught me the things I now get to gift to other people. Like that is it's yeah, it's the most amazing thing. When we think life's falling apart, it's really just falling into place for you.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. Any particular, books, ideas along the way that have been stuck out? I'm sure you've looked through a lot of materials and different things like that, but I'd love to know if there's
So
anything.
many. I think there are a couple good ones I recommend a lot. So, The Joy of Movement for anyone who's looking for more if you want to like get really nerdy on the brain science behind why movement feels so good, that's a fantastic book to read. So Joy of Movement would be one. A Happy Pocket Full of Money. A Happy Pocket Full of Money is a book that I think you would just get such joy out of because it sounds lighthearted. It's very deep. It's all about, it's basically taking like the transurfing, all of that data and like making it for the layman person. So it's very easy for people to understand, but it's deep like physics and stuff, which I love. I don't know, I geek out over things. The other book I would recommend, and this is more in like the relationship realm, right? Also with energy and stuff, is The Masculine in Relationship. I feel like we're in a time and place in the world where men are becoming more feminized and women are becoming more masculinized. And I don't want to get into the debate of all of it, but I don't see masculine equals man and feminine equals woman. In my world, those are simply different words that you can have a variety, right? And I do think there is an outpouring of men who have been requesting from me, how do I show up more masculine for my woman? And women who are, how do I show up more feminine? And to read a book like this that helps you understand what it looks like to show up in the masculine can help a woman realize, oh, that's not my job. If I want to feel more feminine, I need to have a partner who does this. So, such a great book for energy and that kind of like balance. So, I think I could go on and on and on for days with books. So, I'll sprinkle them throughout. But I think those are some big ones that I always recommend to people. I guess
That's
one more just because it's coming up
yeah,
for me.
perfect.
Rich as Fuck. Non-excuse my language. Please take my language. No, like it's by Amanda Francis. It's such a good book. She talks about the energy of manifesting and attracting abundance. I love that one so much just because it can be a little hard to listen to for those who aren't really big on like the Valley Girl because she reads it herself and she's got a little bit of that kind of twang. And the information is so cool because the way that she talks about how our past traumas can actually impact money and our relationship to it is such an interesting concept that she goes through in a very lighthearted way, which I feel is easier for people to consume and accept and reflect on versus some other books, which can be a little bit more blunt and abrupt about that kind of thing.
That's great. I've never read any of those four, so I'm so glad I asked that question.
Yes.
I got four to check out. That's amazing. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your work and how you generally help people. What are you generally, what are the patterns that you're addressing?
Yeah, I'd say twofold, right? One thing that I like to describe myself as the SOS girl is I'm the one that everybody calls when shit's hitting the fan. I, I'm the one that all my entrepreneur friends, business owner friends, people who are, massive in all sorts of industries, they call me. I'm the one who calms you down, who gets you back to like being grounded, helps you to determine what all is actually happening because when we get in this zone, we can't take in all the information. So doing that and then setting a game plan, pouring love into you and get you back on your feet and on the way. So in a lot of ways, I tend to be that person who, when people, I wish they didn't wait until shit hit the fan. I wish like when it's in the hand and they're about to toss it, maybe they would like call. But, you know, sometimes emotions are those things that like until they're actually until they're actually like being felt, people don't really do anything about it. And so Yes, I do a lot of like regulating people. On the flip side, on the deeper end of things, I help people redefine their identity. I help people say, cool, this is who I have been or I was, right? Such great language to talk in the past. This is who I'm becoming. This is who I aim to be. This is where I'm growing to. So that's where I get people to shift because so many people have a natural tendency because they've been programmed through society to just think negatively. It's easy to slide into the complaining of life and all of those things. So my job is to help people recognize that language and switch it. So I've been donned the reframe queen because I tend to be that person that you can bring almost any problem and I will find a way to turn that back around and make it a positive as to how you're going to grow or live. And I know that that can fall into like the toxic positivity sometimes, so I don't do that all the time. Although my clients love it because they come to me for that. They want me to reframe them and help them find the lesson quicker. That's why we do coaching so that you can get the lesson faster.
Hmm.
So I do a large amount of that. And then at the highest level, I work with people on completely reprogramming their subconscious mind and that ability to go in and take those natural things like your values. Your values actually depict all of your natural behaviors. And so if we can shift your values, your behaviors will shift. So while some people say, well, let me go get a personal trainer and a nutritionist and this, and they try and work from the outside in, I just work from the values in. Because if you don't have a value for strength, you're not going to go lift weights. If you don't have a value for longevity or nutrition, you're not going to eat well, right? It's like why fight an uphill battle when we can just switch your values on a subconscious level and then make it easy and you naturally choose that, right? I think that's where I get to work. So I'm working in the realm of the unconscious. I also get to work in the realm of the conscious, the emotions, all those fun things. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else I do. I do a lot of fun things,
That's
but
awesome. Yeah, yeah. No,
support people, laugh, make people laugh, do
yeah.
podcasts, all the things. I talk a lot. I get paid to talk. Is that a good thing?
Hey, if you're good at it, right? Like, hey, right? Like, why not? Yeah, for sure. No, that's amazing. Yeah, I knew we'd have a ton to talk about, as
Yeah.
since we, like met on that other podcast, and I am interested to hear maybe some of your thoughts about the transurfing stuff that you have been listening to and how that kind of connects to some of the other ideas and concepts that you've run into.
It actually connects directly with a lot of the context, concepts that I've been working with in other areas. Like I'm really fluent in neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of that is all around the language that we're using, right? And so I tend to listen to people's language a lot. And I also recognize that these things are completely parallel with a lot of the things that they talk about in that book, because those ideas, like as above, so below, like everything is connected. And that's why I was so excited while listening to it, was because none of the concepts were new. All of the concepts were something I'm already seeing play out in my life, things that I've experienced or learned somewhere else. What it does is it gives me that little like pat on the back of like, you got this, girlfriend, keep going. Like, I like to tell people that information comes in either open loops or closed loops. It's either a new idea you've never heard, so you're opening that loop and you're like, oh, that's cool, didn't know that. Let me go learn more. Or you're reading a book like this or listening to something and it's closing the loop and you're getting that little pat that goes, I do have as comprehensive knowledge as we can have, right? I do have a good enough knowledge in this area to hold a conversation at least, right? Because I know you're probably like me in the sense the more you learn, the more you know that you don't know. And so it's like this ever evolving game of, oh, yeah, I know more. But the more that I know, the less I really.
No, but I love closing those loops. Like
Yes.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. I think I had that same experience, especially with a lot of the energy stuff, where it's like someone's walking like right in front of you, and then you go to pass, and then they just so happen to lean that way. And you're like, why do you do this despite me? Like there's a reason, or that's at least a pattern that's observable enough,
Yes.
that we can kind of point to. So yeah, it definitely had that effect on me too. I love that.
I love the cool things that you can do with energy. I know that I'm one of those weirdos who likes to bubble up my car when I get in it, essentially like putting almost a force field around it. And if I get that feeling in my gut, like this person in front of me wants to turn into my lane, I will literally look at their car and be like, no. and just stare at the car, almost pushing it away with my energy and with my eyes. And I'll tell you, almost every single time, the moment I get past that car, they get in my lane. And I'm like, see, I knew it. So hey, whether it works or not, it might just be a fun game I play in my head, but I haven't gotten into a car accident and everyone seems to get out of my way. So it works.
Hey, if it works, it works. There's no point in, in testing it. But let's see. That makes me want to talk about energy because like it's
Yeah.
such a very real thing. And also it's sort of difficult to talk about, difficult to
Yeah.
define, difficult to even pick out. But you know, in the book it talks a lot about intention, and I've been thinking about this too in a couple of different ways because we kind of have like gas and brakes. It's like
Hmm.
so much of who we are is like, oh no, don't do that. Whereas so much is like just naturally coming out. And I think that with intention itself and with energy and with basically managing that energy,
Hmm.
it's like, how can we feel what that feels like? How can we express that in a constructive way and basically, you know, manage it properly, you know? What is it? Yeah. What are the sensations? How can we start to play with energy? That's a,
Oh, energy is such a fun concept because it is everywhere all the time. And I was recently having this like aha moment. And it was through, I was creating the curriculum for my women's retreat that is coming up in a few weeks. And in the workbook, I was showing how we're just atoms bouncing around, right? You know, that's the basis of it all. You got a proton, a neutron, electron swirling around it, right? Okay, we all get that basic science. Well, if you think about a human, so we're also protons and electrons, or if you think love and fear, where love and fear circulated by electrons, our aura, right? So if you're thinking about it, like on a tiny micro level, we have an atom. We as a human are exactly the same as an atom, and I feel like there's just a difference in balance of protons and neutrons, or that love and that fear that people have. And so it's such an interesting concept of energy and talking about it. I think my partner and I used to have these really interesting discussions. He's very scientific. So, to him, for a while, I think we're just now getting past this, but he used to think energy is just plugging it into the wall, like a socket, like literal energy. And he's like electricity. I'm like, yeah. And also, we are electric beings. We're little batteries walking around. And that was just right over the head. And I'm like, that's okay. We'll get there.
yeah.
If you are new to energy, an easy way to feel it is to just take your hands and rubbing them together for a minute. I'm sorry if this is loud. And you just open them up and slowly bring them together, and you will feel a little bit of a resistance. And it'll get smaller over time. And that is just you feeling energy. That is you literally like it's just moving the little atom molecules around, heating them up, which gives them this little vibration, and then you're feeling that vibration. That's such an interesting and a simple way of feeling energy. Energy is everything. And I think the easiest way when we also think about energy and emotion, because emotion is just energy in motion, is that if you have like sadness is more of like a low level energy. It's definitely, we're going to feel a little more drained, right? Anger and rage might be up here. It's going to be more erratic and fast. And so if you think about this, rage and anger is very much that fire energy. It's like very fast. It's very like raw, raging fire. And that sadness is a little more like water energy. It's that low and slow and very deeply emotional. So, say you are in a sad mood and you want to balance that energy out a little bit, you might want to push some fire into you, give you a little passion so you can get up and do what you need to do. Or maybe you're overly fiery and you don't necessarily want to splash water on a fire, but you might want to put a little earth on it. So maybe you ground yourself a little bit more, right? This is the fun of starting to learn the basics of energy. If you just, we all know air, water, earth, fire, basic. Then we have space, but we won't get into that because that's a whole nother level, right? So we have our four main elements. That's something that you can work with. Another super easy aspect of energy is I'd love to hear a little bit about what you think with the concept of the masculine and the feminine. We touched on that. That's also another duality within energy.
Hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on masculine and feminine energy.
So, I mean, I think it's everywhere. You just demonstrate it with the proton, electron, dichotomy. One of the books that came up with with the masculine relationship is The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, which is
Yes.
also a great book. I can't wait to look into these other ones, but yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely these roles in nature as a pattern, masculine and feminine. And again, that doesn't necessarily correspond to gender or what, you know, we
Right.
can get into all that. But yeah, I think that just like the Kabbalion explains it in that book. Like it's
Hmm.
toward the end, it's like talking about how an atom is born, right? Like how the feminine basically finds the masculine that it starts to vibrate around
Hmm.
as an effect to that masculine, and then it creates a new atom. So it's like, you know, we could do physical replication with humans or whatever, right?
Yep.
Like, same kind of concept. So it blew me away when I first started to learn about that because, well, frankly, the feminine and masculine aspects weren't what I had conceived that they would be or should be or whatever. At that time, I had no concept. But you know, we can look at the Tao, the yin and yang. You know, these principles of, you know, corresponding energies and then also conflicting energies. But yeah, the masculine, feminine, everywhere, and amazing too. I'm trying to learn more about it too. I'm definitely would be one of your clients who'd be like, yes, I want to more masculine show up in my, you know, in my life. But also, I've learned that I can over masculinize things especially as a like, left brained already, like sort of like person. So I've kind of had to learn to set myself up to receive. Maybe that's something that we could talk about. Like in
Yeah.
the book, he says, allow yourself to have. I consider that to be a very feminine element to open up to be able to receive.
Hmm.
And to me, that actually makes more sense than allowing yourself to have, because like allowing yourself to have doesn't really imply any action, whereas
Right.
like setting yourself up to receive means you're putting something together in order to allow yourself to have. So it's
Yeah.
like kind of implies that. But yeah, I don't know, I didn't mean to go too far off, but hey, like we said at the beginning, we're here to go off the
Off the
rails.
rails.
Let's do it.
I love it. No, the masculine and feminine is something I talk about a lot. And recently I've been talking about it more and more. And the more I talk about it, the more people are asking. Because I used to talk about it in terms of relationships. Because for 2 years, I was a relationship coach strictly, working with men and intimacy. And it was very much just helping them with, like, yeah, how do you hold the frame? How do you be dominant without being overly demanding and overly, where's that line? There's like dancing that line, right? I think there is something magical when you release yourself of the attachment of masculine equals male, feminine equals female, and you realize that they're simply the two ends of a spectrum. And that if you don't have one end of a spectrum, you don't have a spectrum because it all goes away, right? We have to have light to have the dark and vice versa, right? So, in the masculine and feminine, as I started to explore that for myself and recognizing what aspects of me were masculine and which aspects were feminine, I started to recognize, like, oh, it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. I'm a highly disciplined individual. That's masculine. The variety and the wildness of wanting something new every day, that's feminine. That's also something that I have, right? So there's these juxtapositions that happen. And I think there is something about that that marries well with another human when you can find someone who has a similar balance. And so I feel like everybody has a percentage, right? This is something I used to help my clients figure out. What's your percentage? Maybe it's 80% masculine, 20% feminine, and you're still learning how to open yourself up to receive more, right? Maybe you're 80% feminine and 20% masculine, and you're looking to learn how to step into your presence more and be more ambitious and have more drive, right? More structure and systems. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just recognizing that there's simply skill sets. So I used to be very, 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 very feminine, probably like 95%, because I was wild and free. And I always liked variety, and I was creating something new every day and always pivoting. And my business was something new every other week. And God bless me back then. Oh, goodness gracious. But I held on. And then I recognized a couple of years back, I need some more structure. I need more routine. I need more systems. And while I don't want to do the same thing every day, it might be good if I do the same thing every week, right? Like, so starting to find that balance, that harmony between what works for me. Now, my partner is completely opposite of me. I am now in a 60-40, 60% feminine, 40% masculine, and he's the complete opposite, 60% masculine and 40% feminine. But that works. And I love this aspect of talking about this because while I used to talk in relationships like this, the new conversation is masculine and feminine in business. So business was always traditionally done the masculine way because for a long time, women couldn't get a business loan without the write-off of a man. You couldn't actually own a business. And so now that we're in a world where more and more women are coming into the workforce with as their own business owners, they're learning from people who have been in business for decades. They're learning the bro way. They're learning the 100 calls a day, chase the no, put out all these ads, go, 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 chase, 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 chase. And you know what that does to a woman? It makes her tight and tense, and it makes her brain not work, and it makes her less creative and not able to connect and not able to nurture. And it just makes her go, what is happening? I'm burning out. And so that's what I'm seeing more and more. And I'm like, okay, cool. What's the opposite? Right. So if we've got the chase, chase, chase over here, which I could label a lot of really shitty businesses as doing that, right? Let's book them before they even leave. Let's make sure that we sell them this and no. Then there's the other side of the fence. You got the Disneys and the Apples of the world, right? The ones that curate every single thing around the client experience. How can I nurture the client? How can I show the client they're loved? How can I show the client that everything is about them and not the ROI and that we're here for them? How do I attract? It's the difference of if you want to catch a butterfly, you don't chase it with a net. You build a really beautiful rose garden and let them come in droves and pay you lots of money to hang out in your garden, right? That's where we want to get to. And so I feel like we're really living in a world of that shift where people are starting to recognize that most of the things taught to us and how to run a business properly, which honestly, there is no right way. You can build a business however you want. We live in a world where you can curate whatever life you want. And I think it's just new age when we talk about these ways of doing business in the feminine as we're starting to unravel those ideas that the masculine is the right way to do it. And I think there is room for starting to help people understand that you don't have to constantly make more money every year. You don't have to constantly have more clients. It's okay if your business just does this. Like that's a-okay. I think there's something there to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think that's great. Can we talk a little bit about opening up to receive and what that might look like,
Yeah.
how we might um,
Yeah.
that?
I have a client right now who I just gave him the book, The Masculine in Relationship, and he told me that his one takeaway from the entire book was this. He said, I used to think it was facts over feelings, but now I realize that with my partner, it's feelings over facts. I was like, what do you mean by that? He said, I used to put up a wall and it was, no, this is what you said. This is what it was. This. And I wouldn't hear her. That's where that empathy is sucked out of the room like oxygen, right? So, in this space of if he's looking to receive, he needs to be open to it. And to be open is to be curious. To be open is to have your walls down. To be open is to be vulnerable, right? So, that ability to put yourself open for anything can happen because when people think about receiving, most of the time they think receiving good things, right? But we got to be specific with our requests to the universe, or else we could just receive a whole shitstorm of stuff coming our way, right? I think if you truly want to be more open to receiving, you have to first accept who and where you are. Because if you can fully accept yourself, good and bad, all the flaws, then it doesn't matter. You can be fully present. And if you can be fully present, because we're not thinking about who I was yesterday or who I'm going to be tomorrow, you can be present. You are open. Because if you're curious and you're present and you accept, then there's nothing else in the way. I think the people who have a hard time receiving are the ones who put this wall up because it has to look like this, it has to sound like this. I'm a bad person. And it's all of them. It's their own judgment on themselves. So if you want to receive, it's really inner work that's got to happen first. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole like constricting, controlling,
Yep.
masculine tendency to outcome. And as the book would say, inner intent,
Yeah.
pushing around the
Hmm.
things instead of, just letting things be as they are.
Isn't it funny how we try and control our outside world when truly all it is a reflection that you are feeling out of control in your inner world?
Yeah.
It's like those people who say, I can't trust myself or I can't trust anyone. It's like, well, you trust that you don't trust people.
Hmm.
And they're like, what? Or I'm not confident. Well, you're confident that you're not confident. It's like you can't, if you want to control everyone around you, all it is showing you that you feel lack of control inside. And so, because once we get to a space where you don't have to control anyone outside, that's because you have full control inside. It's like that's the juxtaposition, this lovely duality of life that we get to explore with everything.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. So you have done some very interesting things. I remember you were saying that you've done a lot of couples work
Uh-huh.
and work in pleasure. So can we talk a little bit about that? I think that's
Yeah.
interesting and uh, yeah, it could be a little bit uh, yeah of a newer topic. I don't talk about pleasure too much on the show, so I think that would be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah. Did you have anything specific or did you just general?
I mean, just general. We can start there, and if something specific comes out of it, I thought it was interesting. You working with people with in intimacy in an intimate setting, in relationships and stuff like that, and pleasure and opening up again. Kind of in this whole space to receive theme. I
Yeah.
think maybe.
So
Is
here's something that I think is really important. I'll start with this because this is one thing that a piece of advice that I gave to my audience. I used to have a large audience on social media that I gave up to take another role at another company, but that's okay. At the time, I was helping a ton of people, and what I had said was, "Hey, if you are having erectile dysfunction, please go get your blood work checked." That's all I said because it is the first sign of a heart attack, because that is the smallest vein in the body. And if that does get clogged first, it means it's probably happening elsewhere. So I said that, and over the course of the following, I think 6 months after that, I had 13 different men reach out and message me and tell me I saved their life because they had no clue that they were on death's doorstep. High cholesterol, high triglycerides, high, 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 high. They had no clue. And all it took was me saying one thing because these men otherwise never told anybody that they were having these problems.
mm-hmm.
Like they would come to me and get on a call with me so shamefully and be like, my wife doesn't even know I'm having ED problems. She just thinks I'm not into her. I'm like, dude, we need to fix this because that is worse than her knowing you're having ED problems. And it would just break me. And there were men who were like, I'm about to lose my marriage because of this. And I'm like, okay, let's work on it. And so really, honestly, the way that you feed your body is huge. And not drinking beer and alcohol is huge. And like there's just so many little things. But that was a tremendous thing. So that's the first and foremost thing that I would say. But then on the pleasure side of stuff, if I'm speaking directly mostly to men, because that's what I was at the time, and even women, this is a good thing too. But the biggest thing for pleasure is get out of your head and into your body because we get so caught up in what do I look like? What do I smell like? Am I doing this right? Is that? Is it this? Is it this? Your blood is here. There's only so much blood volume in the body. You can't expect it to go down there if you're using it here. So you've got to get out of your head. And so what do? We stop thinking about what they're thinking of us and we start seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching them it with consent, always with consent.
Of course.
And I'm assuming we've gotten consent at this point. And so once we've assumed consent, but seriously, if you're feeling yourself get stuck in your head, now women have this too. I've heard from many of them. It's like, I think about, I need to do the laundry and the dishes, but what about the kids and the dog? And like they're thinking about everything. You want to come into the body. And how you do that? What am I feeling right now? And just tap into every sense that you're feeling. What am I smelling? And if the smells aren't pleasant, move right on past that. What am I seeing? So what am I tasting? Like what does this taste like? Maybe it's a little salty. Like maybe their pheromones are coming out. Like this is how we get back into our body. Because Here's the thing is that people nowadays have gotten so good at disassociating. They've gotten so good at their body being in the room and their brain being somewhere else. And so that disassociation, it makes us numb to the world, which is really great when you're in pain. It's really great when you're trying to like get over something hard and you want to numb it out. It's not so great when you want to connect to your pleasure because now we're just dissociated and you're just constantly out of your body and you're like, why can't I find this pleasure? It's like because you need to associate. You need to get present. You need to be in the room for this. And so it's really that five senses is the easiest way to bring yourself back into the room, right? And just focus on that person. That's what's going to help. So instead of disconnecting, reconnect. And one of the simplest things is to slow down. So if you put your arm in front of you like this, and you start just going like this. So rubbing your hand back and forth on your arm if you can feel it, right? So you're rubbing your hand. You can feel stuff, yeah? But if you slow down, you start to feel so much more, way more sensitive. So just slow down because there's something about lighter and slower that the body, it like almost has to turn up the volume on its senses to be able to try and feel that. And so you can just slow and soft and that it makes the body's little like because the hairs on your skin are really what's feeling. So it makes all the hairs stand out and kind of reach out like touch me. So if
Yeah.
you slow down, because everyone thinks harder and faster. And I'm like, if you want no sensation, sure. But like if we're trying to feel some things, like Hey, if the journey's really that great, why are we rushing to the finish line? I
Right.
mean, slow and steady, baby. Like
Right.
slow down, slow down. So, so, I mean, why not? The other thing to think about is that your five senses are all connected. So if you take one away, it makes the other ones more powerful. So that's why a lot of people like to incorporate blindfolds. Because if you take away the sight, now your hearing, now your taste, your smells, your touch, all are heightened. So if you put on blindfolds and maybe headphones to where now you can't hear your partner, you can't see them. Now you do have to have a partner you highly trust for these kind of things. And when you do have that, you have that trust and you have that like exploration with someone, this can be so much fun because if you can't hear them and you can't see them and you're just relying on that touch, now it's heightened to like an nth degree. So those are all fun things that you can do to like help heat things up. I also like to remind people that just like in everything else in life, your five senses are different for each person. So maybe I'm more kinesthetic. I like the touch, and maybe you're more visual, right? So this is going to play with how the play happens. I tend to have a lot of men who would say, "Hey, I'm highly visual. Sometimes I just need a little more." And then the women will be like, I don't know why I can't get there. I just need something more, but I hate porn. And I'm like, cool, I get it. That's not for everybody. And I also know, based on the science and on the statistics, that most women are audible, right? They like to listen to audiobooks and things like that, storylines, those things. So they're audible, and men are visual. So the tip I would give a couple is to take another screen, TV, laptop, whatever it looks like for you, and put that behind her. So she's looking at you, right? So she can hear what's happening, but he can see what's happening.
Mm.
That way he can have a little extra visual stimulation. She can hear what's happening on that video. And as long as you find a good video, women are just like our cycles sync with our periods, right? So we will sync together. Same thing happens audibly when a female is having at the time of her life.
Mhm.
We'll also sync with that. So all you have to do as a woman is just breathe. Just breathe along with it. And if you can pace her breathing, you will actually go ahead and climax with her. So that's the tip for couples who might be struggling is like, cool, the extra visual will help him. The extra audible will help her, gives her someone to pace, gives them both something to do, and it just brings a little more liveliness without having to break the barriers of the relationship by bringing in another person, which that brings another soul tie. That brings in another human, more emotions. Like that's a scary world. I would actually encourage people to play in the exploration of that through means that don't require another human. That's always a fun conversation to have too. It's just like, how do you do that? How do you bring in more people without bringing in more people? And it's like, well, you got to get creative. Blindfolds are helpful. Partners with lots of imagination are helpful. And there are many toys that feel very realistic. And if you can have some of those thrown into the mix, then now you can have a playful way of incorporating someone without having to worry about any repercussions on a physical level and repercussions on an energetic soul level. Because when we're with a partner, we're more than just physically with a partner. We are literally creating a connection to a human you will never be able to release. And I think that's something else to be super intentional about is that when you are choosing people to connect with on that level, to not be very flippant about it, is that, you literally will take on their energy. And I, for a long time, had a very negative soul tie to somebody, and that was impacting a lot of my life. And it took a long time to work through that. And so the easiest way is to just be very selective. Raise your bar, baby. Raise that standard. Find people. And my number one rule, if you can't talk about it, you can't do it. So you should be able to talk about the sex you want to have. And if you can't talk about it, then you're not comfortable enough to do anything about it. So that's like everybody should be able to have that conversation outside of the energy of it, before or after, whenever, but outside of that energy where you have the conversation about what you want to do and then you go do it later, right? I've had a lot of people, conversations, they take the fun out of it. That's what, it's not as in the moment. And I'm like, yes, because we don't have these conversations in the moment. You have these conversations at dinner beforehand. Then you
Right.
go and have the moment.
Right.
I used to have this tip or trick, and you could stop me at any point. I'm just gonna keep because I'm
No, no,
bringing
no.
all these old memories back or coming back.
Let it flow.
Okay. So something I used to run into a lot was men being falsely accused of harming someone. And so, it can be as easy or hard, whatever your opinion is, but it can be as easy to ruin someone's life as filing a false police report. And so my job was to help make sure these men were safe, make sure that they set themselves up for success. I'd heard way too many stories about getting kicked out of college because they were falsely accused, losing a job, losing a career, like all of these things. So what I would talk to them about is while you're out at dinner, it's the first time you're meeting her, whenever you're out at dinner, whenever it's that time where you actually feel like the energy's there and it's going to move forward. Before the drinks hit the table, the key is there is no consent after alcohol. So you must get your consent before alcohol. So before the drinks hit the table, you, in a little coy, fun manner, you pull that little napkin across the table. You ask the server for a pen. You start to write down some things you'd love to do with them. Put little check boxes. Let them check boxes. Let them sign it. Slip that into your pocket. Whisper in their ear about how you're excited to get to do those things with them and save that for later. Because one, as a woman, there is a process to surrender. Part of that process is having clarity and being able to honestly go, yes, I want that. Yes, sign me up for that. No, maybe not that this time. Yes, on that. Like, and if you give me choice and say, I would love to do these things, and me go, hell yeah, maybe not yet, hell yeah. And like, then I sign it, I'm literally already energetically open to you. I'm already like, yeah, I'm excited. You're building anticipation. You're making it fun. It's different. It's not you just pushing yourself on top of me and me being like, I don't know, do I want this? I guess I'll give in. And then that's how we get into problems, right? Because that's where it goes from, oh, she wanted it to really internally she didn't, but she wasn't confident enough to say anything about that. And so here, when we have the conversation before and this little fun little, note, I know I've had so many people like that doesn't sound, that sounds like it could kill the mood. And I'm like, well, that sounds to me like you just need to work on your charisma because it can be so playful. Like, really, imagine just sitting in a booth with someone whispering in their ear, what would you like me to do to you? What do you want to do? And like having those fun things. And as she tells you, just write it down. And then she could say, oh, I want to do this. Write it down. Oh, yeah, you sure? Sign. There are fun ways of doing it. Don't blame the process. Just get better at it. It's like at the end of the day, you don't have to do this. I'm giving this for men who want to stay safe, right? Because we are unfortunately in a world where there are women who are learning their power and they're learning how destructive their power can be, and they're using it in ways to manipulate. And while I do not ever recommend or encourage anyone to do that, I am going to encourage you guys to stay safe. And if a little slip of napkin with a signature on it could be pulled out in court and you say, I'm sorry, judge, but she gave me explicit consent and signed what she was okay with. There's no fighting that. So that's probably the biggest, those are some of the biggest piece of advice that I would give over the years that I think would help with that.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, and good. Yeah, yeah, I'm really really impressed, and I'm sure you've experienced kind of a myriad of things dealing with people in this realm, but I think that's all really practical and good advice. And I just think there's a lot of like shame, I guess, around
Yeah.
sex in general, right? Like, I don't know if that's, I think he mentions that in the book. He says something to the effect of like, if you took everyone and put a stadium's worth of people, there would be two people out of that whole stadium that didn't have any hangups or issues when it came to sex or something like
Yep.
that. I don't remember what the exact quote was, but yeah. Do you think that's like a puritanical thing? Is it because we're American and there's this kind of stigma from, I don't know, generational trauma? Where do you think a lot of
You
that
want
comes
my
from?
honest truth?
I
My
would like
honest.
to know what you think. It's a purely opinion based. So,
I think it's control. I think it's 100% the way that the whoever is at the top. I don't think it's the government, but whoever is the one like controlling the game. I think it's meant for control because if we can keep people look at if I can empower you through your orgasm, you now no longer need to go spend hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars on things that are going to make you feel better because you now have a free resource to tap into your natural pleasure at any point. And if you do that regularly, your confidence will grow, your self-esteem will grow, you will feel better about yourself, you're going to have much more self-love, you're going to treat people with kindness, you're going to do well in your career. This is not what whoever's controlling things wants. I think there is too much for them to lose when we actually have marriages that have glue, which the sex is the glue, that hold them together, right? There would be too much money for them to lose if our family units actually knew what the body parts were and didn't call them cookies and tacos. And we actually called them by their body names. I often in my talks will say jokes about how I had surgeries on my vulva. No, I didn't say vulvo. I said vulva. And I always make a joke because people are like, "What's a vulva?" And I'm like, it's because they just don't know." So I wrote an entire research paper when I was going to school at Harvard Extension School about how I do believe the US is actually harming our future generations by not teaching them sexual terms. Because when we do that, we're distancing them, that we're making it harder to have conversations, like I said, about sex, right? Which then means if the parents aren't having conversations about sex with each other, they're not having sex conversations with their kids, which means the kids are learning from what? The internet.
yeah.
What is the internet teaching them? Harder and faster. And we know that that doesn't work, right? It's like, so it's, it just brings me back to this. Like, I grew up as a pastor's kid. I grew up as my dad teaching thousands and thousands of people on church every single week he was teaching. And I also watched my parents then get divorced and grow apart and all of this because I probably could count on my hands how many times I've seen them kiss in my life. Never saw them hold hands. They wouldn't cuddle. They wouldn't do any of that. My family did not grow up saying, I love you. The most physical touch I got in my family was when I got a burn on my back and they'd peel the skin off my back. Like it's more fun than that sounds, but it's sad because I say that and I know you're grossed out, but I'm over here like nostalgic because I legit was like, this is the only time the whole family would come around and be like, eh. So that I grew up in that. A lot of people grow up in homes where we don't talk about this. And I feel like the less we talk about it, the more misinformation is out there, the more uncomfortable people get. And that's what's causing our problems. We are at the top of the list when it comes to teen pregnancies and teen STDs. The countries that teach their kids these words at 4 are at the bottom of the list, or whatever the opposite is, right? So we have like over in the Netherlands, they start at 4 years old teaching them, and they are, I think it's like 114th ranked on this list. And the US is like number one legitimately in teen pregnancies. It's like a complete swing, all because they just made it normal and we make it like some
Taboo.
big scary taboo, whatever. So I truly feel like there, especially now, we're getting in a world where people are curious, they have access to information, we have access to these things. I do believe there are more people now than ever who are open to sexuality, who are open to talking about these things. And I still think there's a bigger agenda who's trying to like silence it all because I'm not a full believer that there's like shadow banning. And when I was talking about intimacy and I would talk about female pleasure or any of these different topics, I was shut down. They did not want me talking about how you could freely empower yourself. And so I think there's something there. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It just, I think that they're trying to control us with fear because they know that this is a very highly controllable thing. Because young men are getting, they're in a lot of trouble these days.
Yeah.
They are losing themselves and they're losing the battle. And I think that was a big driver as to why I was working with men, but I realized I'm not the one they need to hear from.
Yeah.
They need to hear from a man. And so I started working with women. And so I basically go back to my old clients and say, where's your wife? What's she doing? Like, send her to me. So, there's that. But there's pain across everything. And I'll tell you, if the biggest thing that can change someone's life is releasing themselves of the shame and the guilt around sexuality. When you can realize that there is nothing wrong with you. If you do believe that there is a creator, whatever you label that out there, who created us to be perfect beings, there's nothing wrong with you. You are not falsely giving these thousands and hundreds of thousands of nerve endings that work this way. You are given this for a reason. Do not ever let someone tell you that you are going to be shamed upon and not accepted into some next life because you did this thing that they deem as wrong. I truly believe if there is a creator, they would be more upset that we did not utilize every aspect of pleasure that we were given. They're going to be so sad. I gave you all of that, and yet you just left it there and you didn't use it. Like, why? So the shame and the guilt and all the things that's out there and those people trying to tell you you're not good enough, or you shouldn't do that, and you're bad because of this, and it's got to be done that way, that's all fear. Their fear being projected on you. Your job is to find love, is to go inward and say, what feels right to me? Because I live in a world where I've been with my partner for 10 years and we have zero plans on getting married. We have zero plans on having kids. We have a very different life. And that's okay. And I went through many, 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 many years of so many people. When are you going to have kids? When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to get married? And they just kept pushing. And at the time, the reason they were doing that was because I was open to hearing it because I wasn't committed to what I wanted. And when I finally decided, like, no, marriage just isn't for us. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be. We have our own rules, we have our own setup for us that works. And kids aren't for me either. And that's okay. And the moment I fully solidified in that decision, people stopped saying anything because they don't want to talk to a brick wall. And so when they realize you're not going to listen to them, they'll eventually save their breath and they'll stop talking. And I hear people all the time who are like, "Well, this person keeps giving me their opinion." I'm like, "Well, yes, that means that you are open to it. The moment you close that door and you stop taking tickets, people will stop giving them to you."
That's so true.
Like, it's like, come on now. And so I encourage all people to tap into what not feels good for you, but feels right for you, right? There's a difference in feeling aligned and feeling good, right? There's those who seek the pleasure because it's running away from something and you are actually numbing something else. And there's those who are seeking the pleasure within a balanced state because it feels an alignment and it's serving them. So I think there's a lot there.
Really good distinction. I like that a lot. Feeling right versus feeling good. Yeah, really
Yeah.
good. Well, I have had an amazing time chatting with you. I feel like we could talk for a long time.
I agree.
And there's a lot of things that we could talk about. And I love the work you're doing. I think it's fabulous. Let everybody know where they can learn more about you and your work, and I'll share your website.
Absolutely. If you want to hang out on social media, I'm Jayna.Swan on Instagram and pretty much any socials. This is my website, Awesome Blossom. And I'm also building some new stuff over on LinkedIn. You can also find the app. I guess the best thing is that you guys are going to want to use the app. It's free now for anybody who wants to use it. If you just go to her app.online, you can go straight to the App Store and download it. This page also has a download link on it as well, somewhere in there. So yeah, I'd love to hang out and chat. I hang out on social media a good bit to chit chat with people. We're running some retreats this year, so if that's your jam, if you're an in-person kind of person, feel free to pop over, chat with me about that. We'll see if a retreat's a good fit for you. We got a podcast as well if you're interested in that. And if you're, I'll just put this out there. If you're someone who's over in LA right now struggling with the loss of your home, family, friends, any of that, I just released an episode this morning to give you some support. So if you're looking for that, then feel free. You can go over. The podcast is a millennial's guide to healthy emotional regulation in life and business. And it's a really great show that I'm trying to bring a balance of lightheartedness and the depth at which people need because they're struggling. You can find it pretty much anywhere. I think, yep, Apple Podcast, all the things. So, rebuilding resilience and finding peace after loss. That's the episode you're going to want to find. I talk all about the different things that you can utilize in the app to help you rebuild. And so, just want to support in the only way that I knew I could. And yeah,
I love that.
happy to help.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'll put Jana's website in the show notes as well underneath the video. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. Appreciate it. Thanks for your comments in there. Nick said he was making up electrical boxes and learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Jayna, for being a part of the show. And I'm so glad that we met and got an
Mm,
opportunity to do this. We'll have to do it again for sure.
absolutely.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.